I actually love preparing for these salons because I get to go through and see all the synchronicities emerging as I'm looking. I mean, literally today, as I was getting ready, on Twitter, on Instagram, on the social media, on everywhere, all of these great examples presented themselves. For example, there was one on when we released 14 wolves into Yellowstone. And what happened afterwards was kind of like incredibly Taoistic in what happened, in that we release 14 wolves and suddenly they start hunting deer. The deer change their behavior and they move away from sites that then can have see a return of flora and fauna. They kill coyotes, and coyotes are predators of rabbits. So suddenly there's many more rabbits, many more birds, rivers changing direction from 14 wolves, and really reflecting the harmony in nature. And really, that's what the Tao, I think, is all about. I started reading the Dao De Jing when I was 17 years old, and I read it virtually every year. And then when I was in my mid 50s, I finally began to understand it. It can be very, very highly nuanced. And one of the central tenets that I take away from it is balance and harmony, a union between the rational and logical and the emotional and chaotic. Generally yields just much, much better results if what you're trying to do is enhance better explanations for our world. If we get too much on one side, we're going to get hyper technical. If we get too much on the other side, we're going to get hyper woo woo. I think that there is a place in the world for both. Um, Kind of to begin, when we look back at history, we see that many societies were essentially based on fear. Those that ran society tried to condition the population that they really needed to be afraid. And they wanted to do that, I think, because people that are afraid are much easier to control. And, people who want to rule tend to have kind of the same look to them. I don't think too many of them are, as Lao Tzu would say, the master or the sage. Um, Parenthetically, there's a very good book by David Hawkins called Power versus Force, in which he looks at the movement of zero sum ideas, which he calls force, to positive sum, abundance ideas, which he calls power. I would have used a different word because I think so many of us link the word power to a more negative interpretation. But one of the things that I think that AI is going to allow us to do is to investigate things that we simply had no ability to in the past. So, for example, a single human being, a group of human beings, can't look at a data set of 100 million vectors and say, oh, look, this one and this one and this one and that one way over there all connect. Whereas AI can do that quite easily. So I think that AI used correctly can be an amazing tool for we humans to gain insights not only into ourselves, but into the natural world, into the universe, into a whole variety of things by extending our reach, so to speak. If you think about it, I was around when the internet came around. And I got super excited. I had one of the first user IDs on CompuServe, where it was all numbers, and so after the big number there was a comma, and if you had two digits, boy, you were a pioneer. And I was quite proud that I had two digits, meaning I was one of the first people there. And I got so excited about it because I saw that for the first time in human history, we could literally link human minds together across the globe and create the beginnings of the human colossus. And I view, Steve Jobs called computers bicycles for the mind. I think that AI used again properly, and we'll chat about that and what I mean by that, are actually rocket ships for the mind. They are incredible tools for we humans to learn, to innovate, to investigate, and to strip away much of the ignorance that has still in 2024 guided many of our thoughts and decision-making processes. One of the things that I love about AI is you can use it virtually to extend your own thinking process. I should take a step back and say, I am a passionate believer in the centaur model of AI, which is man plus machine, woman plus machine. I am not an adherent to the we'll let the machine do everything for us. I honestly think that that would basically just deliver a bunch of dreck. I think that AI used as a tool by a human artist, by a human creator, by a human scientist, by a human philosopher will offer amazing insights into things that we've been struggling with for a long time. And, it's funny, I put up on Twitter that I'm giving a talk about AI and Taoism. So naturally, I turn to the AI and ask it what it thinks about that. And what was really interesting was it was really close to the outline I had written. It added a few things, but I have it in front of me. The harmonies of opposites. I'm a huge believer in that. I'm a huge believer in that we need yin and yang. We need Apollo and Dionysus. We need Lao Tzu and Confucius. By combining these rather than separating them, we're going to get a more holistic, and I hope a truer sense for the way things really are. And, AI will be able to be used to make incredible discoveries and advances. That's the yang part. But it's also going to present us with potential serious ethical dilemmas. And as we always know, as even Lao Tzu said himself about the Tao, the Tao doesn't take sides. The Tao doesn't say, I'm only going to put good into the world. It gives birth to both good and evil. The master, says Lao Tzu, welcomes both saints and sinners. And then he adds that the more you use the Tao, the more you get. And so I think that another thing that I find fascinating is the potential to finally help humans as a species and as a culture move from the rubric we've lived under for most of human history, which is that of scarcity, that of zero-sum games, and move more towards positive sum games. And this is important because it's not just AI, it's the fact that the internet brought us interconnectivity, which allowed diverse minds to work with one another. And now AI is supercharging that, giving us the ability to find better explanations for things. And I think that the best way to look at it is if we could take a very Taoist view on how to develop AI, I think we would get closer to the mark than we have been getting thus far. Everything's an iteration, right? But some things are also exponential explosions. So if we try to develop AI as a Taoist might, we would approach it with humility, with trying to be wise and inclusion. That's why I'm a big supporter of open source AI as opposed to closed. But I think that my interest in AI just is an extension of my interest in all of the tools that we can use to extend our reach and make our search easier and hopefully far more fruitful.
What an introduction. What made you read the Tao Te Ching at 17? Was there a particular reason, or you just came across the book?
ever since I was a kid, I have been voraciously curious. I read the Encyclopedia Britannica at my father's suggestion. And my big treat was being brought to the bookstore, something I continued with my own kids. We would have weekends. Every weekend, it was always the same. We would bring all three of the kids to the bookstore, and the rule was they could get as many books as they wanted to, but they really had to demonstrate that they were going to read them. So it just became part and parcel of first my young life with my mom and dad and sisters usually, but then my life as a father to my three kids. And when I was at the bookstore one time at age 17, I was looking in the philosophy section and I found I'd been very familiar with Confucian thought and with the various philosophies in China, legalist tradition, the Confucian tradition, but I hadn't really heard about this Lao Tzu fellow. And so I found the very, very slim volume on the shelf, opened it and started reading a few of them and just got hooked immediately. And so I bought it. And of course, since then, I think I probably own more translations of the Tao than at least anyone I know personally.
Which one is the best? And somebody, I think Andrew shared this older version, the Stephen
so,
Mika
so,
one. Is this the
so yeah. So I always resist answering that question because I guess Stephen Mitchell, which is sort of the most well known and has been around for a long time, would not be a bad place to start. But one of the reasons I try to resist that is as I buy different translations, really cool things happen. So, for example, the Tao has been translated as the way. It's also been translated as the path. But then I came across a translation which called it the process. And oh my God, did I think that that was cool? Because really, that's what it is. It is a continual process of learning. Again, very analogous to the way AI learns. AI continues to learn in a very iterative but continuous manner. It keeps trying to learn more and more and more about the subject matter at hand. It keeps trying to think about the various permutations of that. And so that's why, yeah, Stephen Mitchell, if you're new to it, but there are so many wonderful translations that you really can't go wrong with any of them.
I love this. If there's a young technologist somewhere in the world who will be watching this video or maybe here on the call, what ancient Eastern philosophy would you recommend to this young technologist to understand his or her work better? And what do you think they can gain out of these timeless thoughts?
Well, clearly I'm going to lead with Taoist thought, which is very analogous and very similar to Buddhist and Zen Buddhism in terms of, kind of how to think about the world, how to think about life, how to think about creation. There's a wonderful painting called The Vinegar Tasters, and it shows three people, and depending on which story you listen to, they're different. They're representing different parts of Chinese thought. In one version, one is representing Confucianism, and his look on his face is very sour. And it's very sour because he's wondering, is this the appropriate time to be tasting this vinegar? Is this being done in the appropriate ceremonial manner? Is all of this, conducive to the way Confucius would look at the world? Another was in one version the idea of a Zen Buddhist tasting it, and he looked a bit unhappy because life, after all, is suffering, dukkha. And then the third, of course, was representing Lao Tzu, and he had a huge smile on his face because he was allowed to taste the vinegar in the first place, and wasn't that lovely to get yet another experience in life? Basically, the Taoist look at life as an adventure, right? The journey is the destination. And I move that over to learning and curiosity. It's not so much that you want to know everything, because what we know today might turn out tomorrow to be untrue. Again, back to AI. I think that we will see AI exposing a lot of naked emperors. And by the way, I think that's one of the reasons why you see the legacy people of power not very happy at all about AI. Imagine if, back at, again, the dawn of the internet, imagine if the legacy media companies had gained control of it, as they tried very, very hard to do. The internet would not look anything like it looks today. It would probably look a lot more like the Oasis did in Ready Player One. And so the idea that the internet literally looks at things like censorship, et cetera, as a fault in the system and routes around them. And hopefully, if we're using AI and the tools correctly, we'll be able to find very similar things there. But one of the things that I love also is the very nonlinear nature of AI. I was thinking about the Wright brothers last night, and when they flew, I think their entire time in the air was like 12 seconds, and they went like 100 and some odd feet. And yet somebody watching might go, okay. But what they did was they disproved what some of the smartest people of history believed, was that heavier than air machines or people could not fly. And the moment they were up for those 12 or 14 seconds, they proved, no, that's wrong. I suspect that we will see many such type proofs coming from AI, human collaboration. And I want to underline that. A lot of people, especially people who are fearful of AI, the paperclip people, the, Terminator people, I understand it's something new and can be terrifying. Jed McKenna, who I love, as you know, said that, we're essentially fear-based creatures. And the fear that rules all is the fear of the unknown. And one of the things that we as, evolved to be was pay attention to special novel dangers and fears, because after all, we are the descendants of all the people who ran away when that bush was shaking. So it's very much ingrained in our nature as human beings to be cautious, to be fearful. And one of the things that I think that inculcates that fear is that othering of AI as some anthropomorphic entity. I think much better to look at it as a tool in which we will extend our reach, as most of the advances that we've enjoyed as civilization have occurred over time. And also, another thing, I love the Bucky Fuller quote about how sometimes people are opposed to things simply because they're not tuned in. And he gave an example of the microscopic world. He said, before we had microscopes, we didn't know about the microscopic world. We had no knowledge that it existed at all. The microscope allowed us to tune in and go, oh, heavens, look, wow, there's something there. And in much the same manner, I think we have a much more powerful microscope and telescope in AI, in that it can accomplish things like looking into arrays, as I mentioned earlier, of hundreds of millions of data points and ideas, and isolate just those few that might let us see better into the liminal spaces that we as humans really just can't even look into. So I think that the young engineer would be well served to at least pick up a copy of the Dao De Jing. I'd also recommend looking at Zen Buddhism, Stoicism, and some of the earlier Western approaches to discovery and understanding. That's the other thing that I think Taoism understands very, very well, and that is this idea that the scientific method is marvelous, and we've made such advancements with it. But as part and parcel of the scientific method is the idea that, hey, take no one's word for it. Like, yeah, sure, you tell me that that's true, but I'm going to look into it on my own. If we get AI to a position where it is ubiquitous and available for everyone, this is very important to me. I don't think that AI should be controlled by a few. I think that creates a panopticon, a very powerful panopticon that can tell you what to think, what is and isn't true. In other words, it's a form of control. Back to the book I mentioned earlier. I think that for better AI to emerge, we have to take the much more Taoistic approach of diversity, of a variety of cognitively different minds working on the problems. And then, and importantly, this is a key element here, it should be available to all.
Thank you so much, Jim. We have a question from Diana. I'm going to ask one question myself, then we go to Diana, and then I'm super happy to open the floor and would love to hear from you guys if you're happy to share what might have been a text, spiritual, religious, or literary that was an unlikely inspiration in your journey, in your career, whether that's technology, science, finance, or whichever walk of life you walked in here today. I find that very often, our intellectual journeys stem from really unlikely places. And there is a lot to discover and recommend when it comes to these unlikely texts. So I'm just going to go to my question, then Diana, to give you also a couple of minutes just to think about it. So my question, Jim, and maybe this is a bit cheeky and you're very welcome to offer a vague answer, although knowing you, I don't think you will. I think you'll be very happy to speak your mind. Which technology company today do you think gets it right when it comes to some of the spiritual truths that we might discover reading the greats?
Oh dear.
If any, maybe none, I don't know.
I don't know which company gets it right in terms of marrying the spiritual and or the search for enlightenment as part of its ethos. But I definitely think that the open source community in AI gets it more closely aligned to those underlying principles than the companies who want to have a closed system which is controlled by a few. I call it the panopticon. And as you know, I have 5 grandchildren, and I don't want them growing up under the watchful, ever watchful eye of a panopticon controlled by very, very few people. I mean, honestly, most civilizations have consistently been built on lies, collective illusions. And, that creates the base state for reality. Again, the very cheeky Jed McKenna said, crazy is a numbers game. And then his conversant says, like, if enough people do it, and then he responds, it ain't crazy anymore. And yet, alternatively, he also says, if you're hosting a little tea party between Lord Lion and Lady Gazelle, and someone comes along that doesn't believe your fantasy narrative, the problem isn't so much that they're negative, but that maybe your make-believe world is a bit fragile. And so I think that AI will give humans the opportunity to investigate what theories and beliefs are fragile and which ones are a bit more robust. And hopefully, I once had the idea that we should just have 2 AIs go at it endlessly. We should, have 2 adversarial models, and we could give them everything. Let's do Plato versus Wittgenstein. Let's do Socrates versus Kant, endless, and just have them fight it out. Imagine how much we could learn from that alone. But I also think that it's going to give an unbelievable power to the regular person if we allow it to be free, open, and accessible to all. And just the amazing, I had an experience with one of my grandchildren, my granddaughter. She came into my office and said, "What you working on, Papa?" And I told her, and she goes, "Oh, will you ask it?" And she started listing this series of questions about the children's book that she was reading. And I started doing the questions and first just translating what Maeve had said to me. And then reading, she could read fine, but I would read it aloud. She's like, "I never thought of that. Wow." But then it was just because in real time it was so cool. She goes, "Well, that makes me wonder." And then she had this whole, just out of her came this whole series of questions that she was learning from interacting with it. I think that those kinds of use cases are going to be almost miraculous, especially for people learning or attempting to learn new things.
I love this. And if you don't follow Jim on Instagram, he has some of the best family content ever. And also this beautiful debunking of the idea that having a very successful career means you can't have a beautiful family life. I mean, I think, Jim, we all learned so much from you, how to, organize life around children and grandchildren. It's really, really inspiring to me. So we have all the girls have questions. We have Diana, Kenna, and Anna in this order. Diana, the floor is all yours. I'm so curious how where this will lead. 3 very different questions, I think.
Cool.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, and yeah, thanks so much, Jim, for the presentation. Really, really thought-provoking. So you made a mention to like that the potential, the promise of AI to move us from zero sum to, what was it? Happy sum?
Positive sum.
Positive sum, yeah. And I think, especially given your,
background. Happy. That's even better. Happy sum. That would be a good title for a book.
I like happy sum. Yeah, that's good. I might be stealing that.
Yes, please. No copyright lawsuit here. Yes, especially kind of given your obviously impressive experience in the VC world. So like, what do you think would need to happen for that prediction to become true? And also, given all the crazy stuff going on, what do you think VCs could do better to help us move in that direction? Sorry, I have a really bad habit of asking like 5 sneaky questions as part of one. So please feel free to just,
No, that's okay. That's very creative. Boy, when you get your hands on AI, it's going to be 15 questions. You're going to type your original ones and then you're going to go, that's an even better one. I think that what VCs can do is invest clearly in people who are aligned with the way the VC, in my case, I'll just talk about myself if that's all right, that invest in companies that align clearly with the way you think might be the best way. And of course, I want to emphasize, you think might be. I am certainly not certain that I am correct. If anything, I have learned over time that I'm probably usually not. And I try to remain open to the idea that another point of view is superior to the one that I am currently using. But openness, transparency, the ability of every interested individual to make a contribution to the development of that AI. One of the reasons why I'm such a strong supporter of open source rather than closed. And ubiquity. I believe that this technology is probably the most powerful technology that's been developed in my lifetime, maybe in many lifetimes. And for it to be used appropriately, in my opinion, it really needs to be ubiquitous and available to all. And in such a manner that, listen, I can't remember whose quote this is, but it goes along the lines of, no matter how brilliant a person, no matter how insightful, no matter how clever and creative, you can't ask them to make a list of things that would never occur to them. And the idea is that when we allow many minds, a lot of cognitive diversity, this mind over here thinks very differently than this mind over here, but that's okay. In fact, it's superior, right? Because then we don't get it just going one way. We want the ability for those ideas to percolate and each make a contribution to the underlying development of the AI model. So that would be my view. We've attempted at O'Shaughnessy Ventures to back both open source, but also to back projects like we have one that's called WAND, which is for graphic artists. What it allows them to do is iterate on their own work, which I just think is really cool. What they do is they can load their own work in, the AI spits back variations on it, interpretations. The artist finds one they like, they start working, and then it iteratively goes back and forth and back and forth. I think that metaphor, you can extend it to a variety of things. You can extend it to scientists, you can extend it to entrepreneurs, you can extend it to writers. And so I'm a huge believer in the human plus the machine. I think that's where the gold is going to be.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, and keep all the courageous questions coming. We have a bunch of people queued up, but the next one is Kenna to take the floor, and then Anna.
Hi. So yeah,
Hi, Kenna.
Hi. I am interested in the yin side of AI. I like how you put it in that lens. And so I started thinking about how humans can possess quote unquote supernatural powers and what would happen as the intelligence of the machine increased on the planet. And according to astrologers, the supernatural abilities of humans would increase. And so then I thought, could AI possess supernatural powers? Because humans channel their ideas from somewhere beyond the intellect. And then I started to look into occultists and saw that a lot of them were also mathematicians. And so I was curious what your opinion on this question would be.
Well, thanks, Kenna. That's a really interesting question. And I would think that, for example, I tend to be very pragmatic, and but I always also try to be open-minded to ideas that some others might think are out there, like precognition, ability to improve intuition, superpowers, as you refer to them. I would think that if they do exist, and by the way, we are hopefully going to be doing a project with Dr. Rupert Sheldrake in which we develop an app that tests whether we can improve our intuition or not. But the only way I could actually do that, given the way I'm made, is I want that app to feed a scientific study that looks at the results through the scientific method. And Dr. Sheldrake has assured me, and I look back at his previous papers and seen that he is a man of his word. If, win, lose, or draw, we'll give the experiment a try, and then Dr. Sheldrake will write up the results. Again, win, lose, or draw. So if such a finding were to be significant, then I would think that I don't know that I would separate out the AI perchance, but rather, could an AI in concert with a person who had a particularly well-tuned intuition or other superpower, could they make use of the AI to enhance that power? And my guess there would be absolutely yes. To take it to a more a less exotic domain, I think that's true for everything. I think teachers are going to be able to use AI in spectacularly new ways to allow them to get messages across to students that they weren't able to in the past, because the AI will be able to model the student and they'll be able to communicate in the student's preferred way of learning. For example, most of us are visual learners, but a significant minority are auditory learners. So literally, if you say to an auditory learner, can't you see the big picture? The answer is no, they can't, but they can hear the bell ring. They can hear something that sounds right to them. Same with kinesthetic. You don't want to say, does that ring a bell? Do you see the big picture? You want to say, can you feel what we're talking about here? And for AI, it's a trivial manner to reorder the way you teach your lessons to that type of learner. And I just think that that's going to be a huge unlock for our ability for great teachers to, again, use it as a tool in their arsenal of helping children and adults, for that matter, learn. I think, parenthetically, I'm an investor in Stability AI, which is an open source AI foundational model company. And last year, or actually the year before, we were asked by the country of Malawi to do an experiment where we would train, I think it was a third of their school children. And what we provided were tablets with AI installed. And the interim results that we've received are like stunning. The children being taught with the AI-enabled tablets are well ahead of the students being taught in the traditional classroom environment. And as a matter of fact, I think the Minister of Education has asked that we increase the number of students that we train with these AI tablets. So I definitely see it as an Archimedean lever that's one of the longest that we've ever seen, with the ability to use it to gain sort of exponentially insight into a variety of fields, including the intuitive, including the ones that you mentioned, and kind of actually look at, I'll give you a use case. What about looking at people who, through observation and through paying attention to either the guesses or forecasts that they made, we did a study, an AI study of the 100 that seemed to be the best at making those types of predictions. The nice thing about AI is that it doesn't have, for the most part, unless they're built into it, a completely unneutered AI will not have biases in terms of its human creators. A lot of the AIs of today, as we all famously have seen with the kerfuffle over Google's Gemini project. But I think that unneutered, unlobotomized AI will be relatively neutral, and it would be able to look into what are the common characteristics of these people with these abilities. Is there something in a space where we can't see it by looking? Because after all, we are a bit more limited, we humans, in our ability to do that. It's, I often say glasses, right? Who would be opposed to glasses that allowed you to see better? I don't know many who would. And yet that is not a bad metaphor for what the AI will allow us to do. Again, going back to Bucky Fuller, it will allow us to tune into things that previously we simply couldn't, because we didn't have the ability to do so. So, yeah, I'm not only are we going to, at least it looks like now, come out with this app on intuition and improving intuition, and link that to a scientific study that really says, okay, this looks like it can be improved by this much, or gosh, we thought it could, but at least this app didn't do it. And in that case, yeah, it will be, I think, instrumental in helping we humans extend the ability at looking at things quite differently.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question. Who's next?
I think Anna is next, and then Ashwin, Dave, Michael, and Sneha.
Cool.
You have a beautiful queue, and everybody's very politely waiting. It's perfect. It's perfect.
Well, Anna, let me just parenthetically say that this is one of the things I love about the salons. People who have different points of view can actually have cordial and lovely conversations with one another without shouting and calling each other idiots. So bravo to you,
and
Anna.
our audience.
Bravo
Thank you so
to
much.
you.
This is really the value of our community and our MO and our audience, and one of my privileges in life to participate in these conversations. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And I mean, you know what Kenna said, what counts as pseudoscience, what counts as impossible, what counts as the myth of learning or intelligence in a given era is in many ways not just either a convention or just speaks to the stage of evolution that we are scientifically. And if we assume that AI will unlock, our epistemology in ways that we basically either have never seen or haven't seen since the invention of literacy, then we can assume that in 200 years, what we take for granted about what is a myth, what is reality, how things actually work, what is consciousness, how are we alone in the world, how did life on Earth evolve? We don't know. And in 200 years, we will look back on ourselves and see ourselves as, I mean, the same way as today we think about people and their views 200 years ago, a little bit lovingly and condescendingly, right? If not angrily.
Yeah. And I think it's always healthy to remind yourself how little you know. And another thing that I try to always do is when I'm trying to understand something new or come up with something new, I always try to look at myself as a co-creator, not the creator, because the creator jumps those ego points really high in your system. And this is mine, this is my idea. And I'm going to, die on that hill for this idea. There were a lot of bad ideas that people died on hills for. And I suspect 200 years from now, they'll look back at us and say, boy, the things they believed.
And I love this. I often see myself as a channel, and just the way that you co-create with culture, right? We don't really have origin ideas. Genius is combining two things that don't usually get combined and achieving some kind of success or breakthrough through it. We all are these warehouses of all the things we've ever heard, ever read, the people we understood or misunderstood, and we create these Tetris structures that we then think is our very unique personalities. And so I would think that will be scaled out of proportion in the coming decades. And I'm very excited about it. I think I don't know if it's a paradigm shift or really just really turning up the volume on something we're already listening to and being like, okay, but what if we added all the data in the world into this? What would happen then?
I think actually that's a good analogy, but now imagine the ability to have that view into all of the books ever written in the world. One of the things that we would like to do in our AI setup here at O'Shaughnessy Ventures is to feed all of the world's myths into the AI, and I mean all of them, and see what connections can we see between them. What are we missing? Because I'm sure we're missing quite a bit. There is no end to the use cases. But we interrupted somebody who was supposed to be going next.
I think it's
who was that?
Anna, the other Anna or Anna, my namesake. The floor is all yours. By the way, I have the technicians of the sacred book here, the Rosenberg, which attempted to do this kind of meta myths, and maybe someday we will do a salon about it.
Cool.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Anna. I agree with everything you say on AI. I'm bullish in general. But having gone quite deep into looking into the nature of reality and consciousness myself, eventually I can see that if someone goes deep into these corners, and we have a very smart AI that people respect, let's say, and the question is posed about the nature of reality, it's not unrealistic that the answer would come that, yes, sorry, you're all an illusion. You don't exist as separate individuals. And sorry. So if you have a good background in probabilistic thinking, not believing things, you read Taoism, you read Buddhism, great. You kind of can weather the storm of your identity being dismantled. Also knowing that there are people now who have non-dual perception and kind of see weird shit. Excuse my language. And you then are a 17 or 16-year-old playing with this AI and it tells you that, and you don't have the container of a grandpa who is Jim O'Shaughnessy, who is like you can walk up to and ask weird questions, but you are in a normal household, let's say. What do you think we can do for these people to soften the blow for the ontological shock that this thing is going to bring?
That's a great question. And, I don't have a pat answer to it. I wish I did. I think about that a lot. And I think that, as I mentioned, we need yin and yang. And one of the challenges is what we think now makes I always think of Agrippa's trilemma, right? Which is basically an argument over why logical systems need to be analyzed very, very closely, because they all suffer from the idea that we can gain sort of absolute certainty about things. And when you really look at them, another great piece to read with that would be Lewis Carroll's What the Tortoise Said to Achilles. It's basically the idea that if we keep going down, and Bertrand Russell did a lot on this too, if we keep going down and down and down, trying to look for an axiom that is the axiom that's at the bedrock of all of these logical assumptions that are built on top of it, generally speaking, what we find is a human simply asserting this is true. and so I suspect that if AI got into a situation where it was claiming that everything you think you are is an illusion, in other words, sort of the non-dual perspective.
No, it's not an illusion, as in materially it's an illusion. It's not energetically an illusion, let's say. But for many people, that those two are linked, right?
Yes. And I guess I would say that I can't, with the knowledge I have right now, I can't forecast what the outcome is for that child. I wish I could, but I think certain minds will look at that and think, oh, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I get it. And other minds will be freaked out by that notion. And I don't know whether, again, I'm literally doing this on the fly, so forgive me.
Sorry.
But my idea would be you could have AI notice that this is happening, and you could have a program kick in to make sure, like, hey, don't freak out. Like, here, think about these various things, and bring the person back down to, no longer hyperventilating. The idea that you don't have the limitations and it's not a one size fit all. That's one of the things about AI that I think is so cool, right? It's not like you're in the AI system, you suddenly believe that non-dual awareness is the way things really are, or at least you're convinced of that. And depending on how you react and the questions that you ask and the things you say back to the AI, it could monitor for the idea, like what's the first robot rule for robots? Do no harm to humans. It could say, okay, this may seem shocking, but what about X, Y, and Z? At least that would be one way that I could see it iterating. And because it continuously learns on what you say back to it as well. It's not just saying it to you, it's a two-way process. And so I would suspect that as we develop it and as we understand the way it works better, that type of safety valve, if you would, could be very, very helpful. It wouldn't have to deny the idea being discussed or contemplated, non-dual awareness, but knowing the user, because that's another aspect of AI, it learns on you. And it learns what resonates with you and what doesn't resonate with you in a way that I think is amazing, and that, the best humans can do it, but a lot of people can't, whereas the AI can. And so I guess that would be my on-the-fly idea. I'm sure there's tons of holes in it, but here's another great reason for why we need cognitive diversity. I could throw that out there, and then hopefully people who think I'm full of shit can say, oh, no, Jim, you're absolutely wrong. Here's how you got to do it. And when you have that give and take in an environment like this, in an environment where people are not trying to score points by besting somebody else's argument or gotcha or aha, I'm going to destroy you now. But in an environment where cooperation and the idea of discussion to get to better explanations really means something, maybe someone here has an even better idea than the one I just kind of did on the fly. I like your chair, by the way.
Thank you. The chair is amazing. Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Anna.
Thank you.
And also for reminding us, both of you, the need for epistemological humility when it comes to future risk, whether existential, familial, or to the texture of our society. If you look back at all the frights over new technologies, basically for as long as there have been newspapers, there were headlines warning you against the bicycle and the telegram and everything, right? Everything was going to destroy you. They always
right down to writing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Plato thought writing was a really bad idea.
Yeah, women reading novels will corrupt us.
The horror.
It did, right? And they always got it wrong. Like all of these things, everything in life has a downside and has second order effects or third, fourth, 16th order effects, but it's very rarely what you assume from the previous paradigm or the previous scale. And so I always, try to urge people to just be ready to be surprised, ready for the unexpected, expect the unexpected, and rather develop. And maybe this is where we can learn so much from the Tao, to develop this almost, objectless flexibility, where you have this, watery cooperation with the world, but it doesn't, stick to specific problems or specific things, because those specifics always change. So that would be just my little PS to that. And Ashwin, thank you so much for your patience, and thank you for all the more. I think David and Vincent also has questions. So we go Ashwin and then Dave. Ashwin, do you want to jump in? Did we lose you? No, go. It's all yours. Mike.
Can't hear you, Ashwin.
We could do the classic Zoom.
But for a second, I heard you, I think. Try again? No.
Well, as he gets his microphone sorted, just to follow up on what you said, Anna, you know, AI, virtual reality, like literally, we might be able to experience different realities as easily as we change channels on a TV today. You know, the Buddhist concept of detachment from fixed ideas. We now have technology that allows us to detach from fixed ideas. Wouldn't it be great to once some company figures out the Apple Vision Pro? Hopefully, it's Apple. But that with AI put together, imagine being able to put that on and experience life as a Buddhist in Tibet, and or someone in a completely different reality tunnel than your own. Really interesting stuff. Well, now I hear somebody.
Sorry.
Okay.
I didn't hear it because you overlapped. Do you mind repeating?
Sorry, what I wanted to add to that is that I'm all for it and it's awesome. It's just, I think I still am maybe in a bit old world mindset that there was some kind of wisdom in the old wisdom traditions to give the knowledge to people gradually as they become more mature for it, as opposed to here, you can explore whatever you want before your mind is in a ready state. That's my only concern, but I'm sure generations will overcome. I mean, whoever falls out of the process falls out, like with all difficult challenges. That's my only thing.
I believe in the good natural constraints of human intelligence. You can be dumped the entire knowledge of the world and still you will be like the little boy and the bucket trying to put the ocean into it. We'll see how that conflict goes. Ashwin, any luck? Yes? Speak. We are like, it's a biblical moment. Speak. No, it doesn't work? Then I'm going to go to Dave and we will give you a second to figure this out. Maybe you want to drop off and join back. I promise I will let you in. Dave, it's all you.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Just want to make sure
yes,
my
we
mic
can hear
is
you.
working. Okay, perfect. Jim, thanks a lot for this. This has been super interesting. One thing I wanted to touch on was your earlier comment about naked emperors or legacy people, as you referred to. And I think that's a really underappreciated point regarding AI. I see AI as having the potential to upend all sorts of legacy institutions. And I'd love to hear a bit more from you about your thoughts because on that topic, because frankly, I'm not seeing a lot of people talk about it. I think it's one of these risks that just doesn't seem to be getting a lot of traction, at least among the people I see talking about AI. So what are your thoughts there?
Sure. I think that one of the reasons why you see some of the hysterical reactions to AI coming kind of specifically from those currently in power is they're not stupid. They are aware that, you know, probably a lot of the things people currently think of as facts really aren't. And, you know, systematic lying creates a disinformation system where sort of everyone begins to distrust and demonize anyone who disagrees with them. And reframing is required to learn new things. And part of that reframing might be the tide going out and us seeing all the emperors naked without their swimsuits on. And I say that kind of flippantly, and I don't really mean it that way. It's going to cause some problems. It is going to cause some serious, you know, when we had an original meeting on how we were going to approach AI, a friend of mine who's a technologist, but also speaks Normie pretty well. He I can't forget what specific topic we were on, and he was like, guys, you don't get it. This is Game of Thrones, guys. This is going to be a Game of Thrones, and people are going to fight to the death over this because, and then we went into the conversation about it exposing a great deal of, disinformation, confabulation. Wouldn't it be great if this were true? And then asserting it as true, which it isn't. And look, I think that I'm not in any way naive about the fact that that's going to cause some pretty intense battles. You kind of see it right now in the behavior of the old power structures. Mm-hmm. The one aspect that I would say, and this is bigger, so I want to underline that, but it's instructive for us to look at what happened in the past when a new technology came on the scene. What happened? Well, what happened was the existing power structure did everything in its power to kill it. In fact, it gave me one of the good ideas, and I heard somebody who was talking about Bitcoin, which I don't really know much about, but I really did like this framing. And she said, one of the things that's very interesting to me about Bitcoin is they can't kill it. They keep trying to kill it, and they can't kill it. And so that would give a nod to Taleb's anti-fragile. And so I suspect that a lot of, what did Ben Graham open his securities analysis with the quote, the old Roman quote, many who are currently in honor shall be fallen, and many of the fallen shall be restored to honor. So it's not like we haven't done this before. I don't think that we've done it at this scale before, because I definitely think that, listen, a lot of the way society is, and by the way, this isn't a conspiracy. It's we see it in societies all throughout history. Societies develop to, the rulers of those society want order, they want power, they want the people to do what they want them to do. And so one set gives you a set of commandments, another set gives you angry gods, another set gives you dialectics, another set gives you, well, the market's the best, and here's the reason for that. But they all have operating paradigms that work best for them to stay in power. So I suspect, as one simple example, I have seen some early research on scientific papers that have been analyzed by AI. And it is a not insignificant number of them that are coming up as fake data, plagiarism everywhere. And the other one that I thought was really interesting was very weak original sources that ended up winning because they got cited by more papers than any other. So that's how it happens these days, right? So if a paper is cited by many other papers, it goes up the tree and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, what happens when you then analyze, okay, let's go look at the thesis or the axiom in that particular paper. Is it robust? In many of the AI analysis I've seen, it ain't robust. It simply just got cited more. You can game those systems all day long. And AI is going to make it much more difficult to do that, because you'll have it running. What you'll see is, again, back to yin and yang. Some people are going to use this for ill. There's just no way around that. And rather than bury our head in the sand and say that's not going to happen, I think we should prepare ourselves for countermeasures. I think that we should prepare ourselves for that eventuality. And so that's a simple example, but then imagine what's going to happen when all of the, and I hate to be US centric here, so let's make it Congress or parliaments or whatever ruling system passes laws. What's going to happen when we put all of those laws in the AI and say, what do you think here? And then they tie back. Well, this law is here because of this special interest over here who gave this amount of money to this senator or this member of parliament. And people are going to have access to clarity around things that they simply lacked in the past. And so, absolutely, who I think it's Brené Brown who says curiosity is a shit starter, and AI is going to be one hell of a shit starter.
Very insightful.
And I think I welcome it.
Likewise.
Bucky Fuller had another great line, which was, don't try to tinker with an existing model that's obsolete. Don't try to rearrange that model. Invent a new model and make it obsolete. And I think that's kind of what's going to happen here.
Thanks.
And I can see that Ashwin is both back and asked 2 questions in the chat. So I think we can expect 2 questions. One is about the post-Google world, which we can also debate whether that's a thing. And it reminds me of one of the key rules of power, which is that those who are leaving power, whether in the Roman world or today's world, or in Game of Thrones, they never leave peacefully. The only peaceful transition that you can create is making them believe that they are still in power, and then they'll be fine. Jim, let's try the mic again for Ashwin and see what happens. If not, I would just read up the questions from the chat.
Hi guys, can you hear me now? Hopefully,
we can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anna, first of all, for hosting this brilliant salon, and thank you, Jim. I've read your Twitter account, and it's always full of knowledge, every post that you have. So I'm just fanboying a moment. So thank you. So I think just reflecting on the way I use the internet at the moment, and the way I use Google has dramatically dropped since the advent of ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity. So what do you think about how would a world look without Google, essentially? Where would that search come from? How would we start using the internet? And I think my second question would be, I see that you're an investor in Prophetic AI. I really love what they're doing. I think lucid dreaming is such an amazing part of science. So my question would be, how do you think lucid dreaming would help unlock the hidden realities of consciousness? What mysteries do you think it could solve about reality and the way and our place in the world?
Thanks. Both really good questions. And obviously, I always lead with, I'm probably wrong. So take it with a grain of salt. I think that Google has really surprised me here. I was fortunate enough to sit in on a meeting a few years ago with their top AI people. And what I found was a group, I was certainly the stupidest person in the room. And what I found was a thoughtful, like really interesting discussion being had among these people. It was obvious that they had been thinking deeply about this. And yet we saw kind of the fiasco that Google has repeatedly stepped on rake after rake after rake. And I think that is what's interesting to me. It's kind of like even having a group of incredibly brilliant people does not mean you're going to win. You can have other people in the mix who have very different agendas, and if they win out, it doesn't matter how brilliant your developers for that particular AI or that search are going to be. And that appears to be what's happened with Google. In terms of your specific question about search, I think that the whole idea of search will be far better replaced with individualized AI. And to the point where as the AI gets to know you in a manner that search currently can't, search is very good at saying, oh, well, Jim is this age, he has these interests, we'll serve him this ad, right? AI doesn't have to serve you ads. It can be optimized, to use geek speak for a minute. If we maximize the objective function for creativity or for Jim's interests, guess what's going to happen? The AI is going to serve up all of those things. Now, in my case, I would say always throw a curveball at me because I want to stay up on what other people are thinking. But my point is the ability to, I fully believe that in 5 years from now, we'll all have AI, personal AI, on our devices. And they'll know us well enough so that I'll say, Thucydides, and up will come all of the writings that I've marked. I'm in the process of digitizing like 40 plus years of journals. It'll interact with my own data, and we'll be able to find specific things that a Google search was just the beginning of. And that's the other theme here. Nothing is permanent, right? So Google search was a order higher than the other way of doing it. But, when you had Yahoo, when they were around, they had human searchers, and they determined what got put on the Yahoo homepage. So it was basically curated. Well, what are you introducing there? You're introducing all sorts of biases, all sorts of agendas, all sorts of, in the case of Google, that's how they make their money. So you're going to get searched by, you're going to get results that they're getting paid to show you. And I think that a search engine, a UI or UX rather, where that is seamless, your searches are going to be vastly improved. If I was Google, I would have been all in on that. And, historically, we see this time and time again. GE had a big part in investing or inventing the transistor, and yet they didn't commercialize it. Why didn't they? Well, because at the time, their vacuum tube division was the most profitable. And they found it very, very difficult to say, you know what? We've got to do this. It's going to destroy our vacuum tube division, but so be it. It's easy for people to see in hindsight what should have been done, but it's very difficult to go and kill your most profitable division in a corporation. And then the second part of your question was about lucid dreaming. Yes, we are investors in prophetic AI. We think it's amazing. I think that the idea of, again, and it, for me, it really nicely illustrates my idea about the most powerful way to use AI. I think that lucid dreams could be phenomenal in a variety of contexts, right? Let's say you're a writer. You might be able to get some great stories out of lucid dreaming. Let's say you're a scientist. Many scientific discoveries were found, in altered psychological states. And, these paradigm shifts are fundamentally different than iterative processes. And so having the ability to lucid dream, remember the dream, and then have it analyzed by AI gives you a situation, I think, where you're going to be able to get insights that simply weren't available to us in the past. Not to mention all of the other uses outside of lucid dreaming should the tech that prophetic is developing prove robust. There's going to be a lot of medical use cases there. There's going to be just tons of use cases. So I think it's yet another example of our ability to get closer to being able to generate better explanations. That, that's the other thing about kind of the Tao and the way they look at the world. And it's, you know, stasis is death. Movement is life. And, you know, the Tao essentially basically says that, you know, when we are born, we are soft and supple. When we die, we are stiff and brittle. Same is true of many things in nature. So it goes on to say that, you know, the stiffness and the dogmatic are disciples of death, and the open, the supple, the yielding are disciples of life. And I think that for us as a species, we really want to embrace that which does its very best to help us avoid stasis.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a beautiful idea. And I think you notice that on some of the most interesting people, whether they are in the creative fields or technology, science. I think as Grimes would say, the difference is superficial. They become more and more childish as they grow older. And if you meet some of the great spiritual leaders, you know, the Dalai Lama, they are childlike, happy, always
that
laughing.
And that would be the only thing that I would correct there. I would say childlike, not childish.
Yes, absolutely. Sneha, the floor is yours. I love the outfit.
Hey, thank you. This has been super interesting so far. So it's lovely to have you and Jim in conversation with all of us. Jim, where do you think in the human plus AI model, how and where do you think the Taoist principle of Wu Wei would best apply? So I saw your tweet where you asked ChatGPT ahead of the talk, and it suggests, which I thought was obviously amazing. And I thought that it suggested that seamlessly integrating into non-activities was its concept of potentially thinking of Wu Wei. But there could also be an angle where you would think where non-interventionism would potentially be better as the more natural order. So I was curious about your thoughts here.
Thank you. As I listened to you, I was reminded of the Oppenheimer quote, which is, "Of course the world is going to hell, and the only conceivable thing that we can do to stop it is to not try and stop it." And that's kind of a great example, at least in my mind, of actionless activity and sometimes not intervening. I think that the notion of Wu Wei, actionless activity, basically translates into the AI world of always trying to work in harmony with the human user. And there will be times, I think, that the AI elects to not, in quotes, correct the human user in terms of a particular thesis or idea that they're trying to develop, but let the human fall down a little bit. And by that, I mean, I have certainly gained much more knowledge and wisdom from things that I failed at or made mistakes in than the things that just always swimmingly went my way. I think that mistakes are learning-rich environments, and that they give us the opportunity to, as I said earlier, understand that to move on to a better understanding or a better explanation, we definitely have to have the ability to reframe. And so I think the Wu Wei aspect of AI development would be, on the one hand, sort of actionless activity, meaning that it always is present, kind of like electricity, if you will, and that it doesn't ever try to install a correct answer machine in your human mind. You know, much of the education system of the past has attempted to tell you, no, 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 no. There's only one answer to this question, and I'm going to install that answer in your head, and I'm going to install the correct answer machine, rather than teaching us how to think. It tries and endeavors to teach us what to think, and I don't think that that's actually learning. And so I think that AI will be uniquely able, again, because it's going to be able to train on you and the way you do things, the way you process things. And it's the ultimate in customization, in my opinion. The ability to have an interactive tech that trains on me and can put things in a manner or reframe things in a manner or help me reframe things in a manner that I gain a better understanding and therefore can co-create a better explanation. That to me reflects the Taoist notion of actionless activity, wu wei. I'd also point out sort of the pu, the uncarved block. And that's all around the flexibility is shaped to the needs of the situation. And I think that there too, its flexibility and ability to know it's conversant in a way that we humans simply can't, because we're not mind readers. We all think we are, but we're not. This will now be able to help us become a little bit more tuned in, if you will, through that avenue of actionless activity.
Thank you so much, Jim. I think we have 2 minutes left, so I thought maybe you could choose.
Oh man! Wow.
One of the questions. We have 3 questions, and you can choose one of them as kind of the outro. Is that okay? Just to be
sure.
So David, Vincent, and Zach could all ask. So Zach is asking, Jim, you're the emperor of the world, and you can insert 2 ideas into every person's head regarding AI and the Tao. What 2 ideas would you insert? That's one question. Vincent is asking, we shape our tools and our tools shape us. How can we shape AI to help us make progress in our wisdom to keep up with the progress in our technological capabilities? And David is asking, is it true or have you heard that binary logic was inspired or influenced by the I Ching? That's true, via Leibniz. And Alison Gopnik has a wonderful notion on how through the monastery of La Flèche, there were further influences from the Chinese missionaries into Enlightenment thought. Jim, which one of the 3 seems most salient?
Oh boy, that's tough.
It's like the 3 questions, like, what's the meaning of life? Which one seems easiest to do in 1 minute?
Well, I can do the meaning of life really easy for you. 42.
Oh no, it's just a number.
And I guess I would take the one about how can we best, our tools shape us or we shape our tools and then our tools shape us.
I love
I think it's quite true to begin with. And I think that AI can shape us for the better by helping us realize and this speaks to the Tao as well, about the interconnectedness of all things. An AI trained in a manner similar to the philosophy of Lao Tzu would be able to, at least I hope it would be able to, demonstrate this interconnectedness in very tangible ways. And things like I mentioned earlier, liminal spaces fascinate me. And as an individual human, I lack the horsepower to be able to look into liminal spaces. I do have the ability to use the tech to do so. And I think that the journey that we're all on as a collective species is hopefully mostly up and to the right directionally. That's not to say that I'm not aware of the 1,000 years of darkness that descended on us after the Roman Empire fell, and I'm not I'm not Pollyannish at all about the fact that things can go the other way, and I think that it is incumbent upon all people of good intentions to be in this discussion, to be in the conversation about, okay, we've got this incredibly powerful tool. It can do good, it can do evil. Let's try to do the most we can so that it's trained with the humility of how little we actually know, and use it in a manner to hopefully get us to come up with better and better explanations. We're never going to find the answer. At least I don't think we are, because we are forever learning new and giving better explanations. And to me, that's fantastic, because right now we have this tech in its infancy, and if all of us really take an interest and really have a conversation about how it can be best developed, the idea of interconnectedness can only go to our benefit, I hope. Because when we see the world of today and many of its problems, a lot of them stem from the othering of other groups, right? Like, you're bad, you're horrible, and you're not in my tribe. So little separates us as humans. So little separates us from other living organisms on this planet. And if you look at the planet as a whole, back to those wolves being introduced to Yellowstone, harmony is achieved by a balance. And oddly, Yellowstone had become disharmonious, dissonant, because the wolves weren't there. Put the wolves back, and all of a sudden, harmony gets restored. And that's an interesting idea, because to many people, wolves are not cool. Wolves are not good because they're predators. But we forget that nature is a perfect use case to look at. Look at the way nature develops, and that could also have profound implications in terms of how we choose to develop this incredibly powerful technology.
Amen. Thank you so much. And Kenna, also thank you for sharing this beautiful poem in the chat by Olivia Butler. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change.
Oh, I love that.
What a beautiful coda for this wonderful conversation.